So inside here, one of the most important things to understand with Illustrator, Photoshop, After Effects, Premiere, any Adobe software or graphic design software for that matter, is this idea of layers. And layers help us structure our content to make it more easy to swap in, swap out, create a background, foreground, midground, and really define the areas that we want to organize our content. And so I like to think about this through the lens of being a sandwich, right? Where a sandwich, you are able to see everything from the top down. So we have our bread, and underneath that is our cheese, followed by tomato, lettuce, and mustard or mayo, depending on what you're into. And the layer of bread is going to be on top. That's what we want to see first. And so the way that I have this structured is I have my bread, I have some cheese, tomatoes, lettuce, and so on. Now, to see our layers in action, I'm going to open up this panel, the layers panel here, or I can go to Window and Layers, and that will open up this panel. And I'm going to increase the size of these panel or the objects here. Let's do these at 50 pixels just to see them a little bit bigger. Great. And I can drag down this here. Actually make this a tiny bit bigger. All right, cool. So here we see our top bread, cheese, tomato, lettuce, mustard, bread background. And I can turn off the visibility of layers. And I just drag down those. And what I can do is look and see, okay, my background has one thing in it. It's this rectangle. If I am selected on the layer and I draw anything there, it will be added into this object. So here, notice that it's adding these circles into here. And let's get an actual circle. I'm going to make these white. Cool. All right. So here, now I have these circles inside my shape here. And then I can turn on the visibility and see that I have the bread here, followed by the mustard, followed by the lettuce. And this lettuce is only it's groups of shapes. So these are all grouped together, followed by 6 different objects here of tomatoes, followed by cheese and top bread. And if I want to rearrange these, all I have to do is drag, and now the cheese is below. If I want the mustard on top, I can quickly change those. If I wanted to change the contents of all of these lines together, what I can do is I could go in and notice that selecting this does not select the object itself. And let's hide this top bread. Notice that if I select the shape here, it doesn't select my particular one. I have to click on the target to be able to change it. And that allows me to then, if I want to change this to ketchup or mayo, cool. Now that is selected and changed to a different color. I could also do that for the entire layer. So if I select this button here next to my layer name here, that's going to select everything down the line, and I can quickly change that to all be white. Change them up like that. Cool. And I would want to change my name. And I double clicked on the title here, or I can double click on the thumbnail to get access to this menu. Now I can put this bread on top. Cool. And so this is how this idea of layers works, through being able to organize it and being able to see everything stacked at once. So if I come to this example here, I just have a stack of 3 different groups of objects, 1 object, 2 object, 3 object. And you'll notice that when I select one, they all have this red line around them. And that's because this layer here is identified with a red mark. If I double click on the thumbnail, I can change that to be blue. And now these will all be blue. So this is how I can visually identify what is inside a layer. Now coming back here, if I want to create a background on a new layer, I can go down to this button the create new layer button, and it'll create a new layer above everything else. It likes to do it on top. So say I want to create a background that is just black. So it'll be a black background like that. Rectangle, I'm going to zoom out a bit. Now it did it on top of everything else, and it actually did it on the stack layer that I was selected on. So what I'm going to do is select this rectangle, move it to my other layer, and now if I drag this layer below everything else, we are much more organized. The last step is to rename this to background. And so these are sort of the basics of working within layers. You'll notice that inside here, we have groups. And so if I wanted to move one of those groups, right, I could come back to my black arrow, select the shape. I could double click and use isolation mode to move one of these objects, right? Press escape to get out of it. Or I could select inside the group itself, shift it over. And now when I click out and click back here, it's still a group. So as I was saying earlier, you could use isolation mode, you could use the layers panel. There's so many ways to do the same thing. It's really about your personal preference and what you find to be the most clear.